Bling, bling, bling. Let's go back to my ling. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's. What the hell is this? The Broiler Chicken Show. Cue the sound track. Bark, 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 bark. Well, that was a bad version. Oh, well. Happy COVID insanity! I sure hope, obviously, lots and lots of sickness still going on around in the world. Oh, we're sort of getting used to the new normal. It's kind of joking how we were playing some music before we got the video going. Maybe reminiscing about the days of old. We're actually going to look back on this after all of the dust has settled from all of this. And yeah, we will have to transition into a new economic cycle, the new normal. We're going to be hearing, of course, about COVID relief programs for quite some time to come. People are probably going to be reaching for sort of old highs and nostalgic. I have to say, and I'm certainly not bragging, I actually was a little surprised, to be perfectly honest with you, but I did see actually my own personal trading accounts are actually higher than they were prior to the crisis and all the break and stuff. I actually found that a bit surprising. I didn't think that was going to happen. But I suppose if you can zip in off the lows and grab stock and let it double in price and let some go when it rallies, the profits can actually stack up pretty quickly and can offset when you have to do things like get stopped out at a 10% loss, 20% loss, that kind of thing. And what's really interesting is if, when you are in the moment, you get all sort of wrapped up in the short term and all stressed out, and you don't sort of see the forest through the trees. So often it's a really good exercise to just simply, keep a log of your trading. And then you can go look back and you go, oh, gee whiz, you remember back last November we went on that 10 win in a row winning streak, and and then you look at like your losses maybe of late, 10% loss, 12% loss, 13% loss, 17% loss. Oh, Jesus. But it's like you're dying a death, like a death of 1,000 small cuts. And then, the market eventually bottoms and then you go back to work again. So that's really sort of the way that I've sort of found the past month or two. Unfortunately, though, I'm kind of feeling like the sort of dead cat bounce-ish, if you will, nature of this recent rally that we've seen basically right across the board, whether it be commodity prices. Crude oil's not trading minus $30 a barrel anymore. What the heck happened? I thought the crude oil business was going out of business. And it just shows, holy schizophrenia. It's a really, really hard, and I kind of was, dreading this from a sort of a personal perspective. Having to sort of, show up and be a good mentor and a good demonstrator of best behavior and a good sort of, I would like to build a small business of trading kind of stuff during a market that really, I wouldn't actually really recommend a lot of people in the public try to outwit the market through this period. This is really, these generational cycles are painful in themselves. And when we hit these apexes, man, it's incredible to watch how fast the story changes. But also, too, we've got, like business cycle. Of course, the Money Masters guys would simply call that the banker cycle. But the business cycle, we say usually recessions happen years that end in seven, not so much sevens, but definitely eights, nines, zeros, ones, and twos. It's shocking how often you can literally set your watch to it. So here we are in 2000, and pretty much the system is setting us up for a recessionary type environment. And it's fascinating. Like you usually think, okay, well, the business cycle will come to an end because borrowers borrow too much money and the credit market seizes up, and that's the classic TED spread kind of thinking. But what I've actually learned in my 50 years is every single cycle, its pivot is different and it's based on its own characteristics. And in this particular case, it was a sickness, a global sickness that tipped the economy over. But I think If you just simply understand the big picture, see the forest through the trees, if you just write down in your journals years that end in eights, nines, zeros, ones, and twos, probably best to just maybe cool your jets. I thought it was really interesting how I think it was, geez, it's almost, I think it's 2 years now, but it might have been last summer. How John Bollinger, a guy that I've respected forever, he publicly came out and said, I am officially not interacting with the public anymore. Sorry, people, you're on your own. Because I have a feeling he knew that this was coming. And it's tough to be the demonstrator of best practices and to be a good role model and to be PMA for the win when we are in very difficult trading environment. I don't know. There's a horrible sort of setup for you. I think on balance, through this period, especially, I have to say, in a weird sort of way, maybe this is a mission from God and JoJo and all that. I sure hope so. Wouldn't that be great at the end? You find out that I did get a message from the other side and I'm doing exactly what they wanted me to do, and this place is thriving and prospering because it's good karma and we're really trying to change the world. Wouldn't that be great? Man, if that's how this story plays out, when I'm said and done, I look back with my maker and that's how this played out, man, that I would be so, so happy. I mean, you can get into philosophical sort of, conversations. I don't know. What I do really like about what sort of we've done here at TRI is this is a safe place where people can come. We have such a robust community now. And that was the hard part when we first started this website was obviously people were just coming and listening to my rants. And we didn't have really a lot of people in the community that actually really believed half of the stuff that I was saying. They just sort of like, okay, Brian, I'll listen to you. Okay, I've given you some money. Okay, try and help me. And, over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, I suppose we've got a lot of people that are like, damn, this shit works. And they've stuck around this site, which of course pleases me immensely. And now we've got sort of generations of TRI. It's like it's layered. And I was so pleased today. I think I officially got kicked out of class, the level 1 class. Because, you know me, I mean, you watch these silly YouTube videos. You know how much I love the sound of my own voice. You can imagine how much I love the sound of my own typing. So I was in the lounge and posting funny GIFs and stuff like that and throwing like paper airplanes around and and the great part about it is Groom, our level 1 instructor, he's so perfect. He's incredibly patient. He is that like Wookiee character. Don't get on his bad side or he'll chop your head off. But he's so, warm and cuddly, and he speaks from a position of strength and knowledge, and he eats his own cooking. He simply wants to impart the very universal information about, learning the process and all that. And we have 2 totally awesome TAs that are just like, I call them my stealth fighter sharks. That affectionately, one gentleman goes by the name, what the hell's your name on this site? It's pretty long, but it's so beautiful. And it speaks to the fun that we have at TRI, right? Because, that we're running a business of trading. And, a lot of times it's not very fun, so we try to, put, a fun spin on this. Where are you, Sharktoshi? His name is Sharktoshi Nakamagawan, if I'm not mistaken, anyway. And then, of course, Monday to Friday, I have my co-host on the Daily Brief and the Daily Brief recap videos that we do, Kevin, the Kavarkinator himself. So, again, sort of like, they actually came like a generation after Grimm. So it's beautiful to watch like the layering of what's going on here at TRI. And it just made me so happy. And I was a troublemaker, and Grimm's kind of like, excuse me, Mr. Beamish, can you go stand in the corner? I thought that was great. I have to, of course, give a big thank you and a big karmic thank you, that kind of thing, to the fact that so many of you believe in TRI and believe in me, that I am giving you the straight goods here. And you clearly showed up. I mean, frankly speaking, I was absolutely shocked. It is a very big class. We have like a whole bunch of redundancy. And I was so proud. Yeah, you people over on YouTube are like, why the hell is he doing it so late, man? I got things to do, man. Where the hell is this guy? But, there were so many questions that Grim just slowly worked through, aside having to kick me out of the class and sort of get back to work. But he just slowly worked through every single question, slowly, step by step. It's just so awesome. And that's why we're doing the show now, probably about an hour or so after what we would normally do. And I got to tell you, man, just even that module, because it's such a huge module, understanding, trying to see the forest through the trees. And that's a huge hurdle for a lot of new people to this business, right? To actually understand that there's sort of a mechanism going on here with this whole thing called capitalism. That, cryptocurrencies, the whole reason why they came into existence is actually very intermeshed with this whole sort of global asset, I don't know, what do you call it, soup, for lack of a better word, that we humans we are existing in. And cryptocurrencies, and interesting, one of the sort of takeaways from class today was, cryptocurrency started out as sort of one, proxy measurement and in one type of asset class. But there are those people in cryptocurrency that would like to see cryptocurrencies evolve and maybe even cross classic asset class barriers. The great part about the cryptocurrency story is, in my opinion, it's still very, very much in its infancy, right? I like the idea, the general concept that cryptocurrencies are really nothing more than just yet another evolutionary step in the development of this thing called the internet. And it's just yet another sort of protocol that is being built out on this massive infrastructure. It should be interesting, especially with sort of course of events and world history and stuff. It should be interesting to see how this internet, being itself, whether it actually starts turning into almost like self-preservation mode, and whether we actually see the net itself evolve, maybe into multiple species, maybe multiple nets. It's fascinating. And as sort of a student of the market, I'm, of course, entirely engrossed in this. I definitely, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, believe that something like a Bitcoin, to a certain degree, ate the classic fear asset proxies lunch through that last demographic cycle. In essence, the irony of it all is through the first part of the cycle, all of the commodity prices got bid up way too far because the people in power knew about the cycle and they took advantage of it and they ramped oil prices up. I mean, it's almost comical. I remember back in the late 90s, oil was like $10, $15 a barrel. Couldn't give it away. Then all of a sudden, just a few years later, it's $100, $150 a barrel. I mean, did an actual barrel of oil actually change? I mean, something must have happened there. And if anything, that's a classic anecdote of understanding money flows and understanding sort of like all it takes is a little nudge, right? Like for our level 1 students, I hope, and actually this is a pretty important concept for just even the general public to understand, is and actually this was made by a student of ours back 5 years ago, Tim, Gravity. Sure hope he's still doing okay out there in the world. I haven't heard from him in a while. But if you can think of the world's capital as really not necessarily getting created or destroyed, it just simply flows through the system. Sadly, of course, there are ways to dilute the capital, which I think sadly is pretty much what's going on with something like the US dollar and our classic measure of assets values versus US dollar. I think it's a Ponzi, it's a bit of a fugazi because the powers that be are messing around with the actual US dollar itself, the actual number of US dollars out there. And actually, it's an interesting commentary. We were having this argument in the lounge, or sort of debate in the lounge today. Could you argue that tether printing is really nothing more than more US dollars in circulation? I found that fascinating because I'm actually hearing that tether is now becoming a very popular asset in China. So technically that means there's a whole bunch of Chinese people sitting there long tethers thinking that they're long US dollars. It's supposed to stay with the US dollar. So isn't that just like printing more US dollars? Backed by nothing. Oh, don't scare me, Rocker. Oh, and everybody, we have to start the trading day off, everybody. And maybe this is an excuse that I have to have the camera on. I love this. This is such a great testament to what we do at Top Step. I used to work quite a while ago at a prop firm, and one of the gentlemen that was a principal at the prop firm I really liked, and he started up a free video service first thing in the morning for the public, and I was like, you know what, we should make it a habit, if you really do want to be a trader, that we all attend John Hoagland's Top Step. Maybe we even give them a shout out in this video. If somebody has the link, I'll throw it on the screen. But John does a just sort of a market prep kind of video, and I think it's a great idea that if you do fancy yourself a professional trader, yeah, I know I'm getting off topic. I'm sorry, damn. Somebody in the lounge is like, Brian, can you get back to the subject, please? And this is how these videos turn into like 3 or 4 hour marathons. But do yourself a favor, load up the Top Step morning broadcast with John Hoagland and look for John's rocker salute first thing in the morning, and that's a good sign. So if I get the rocker salute first thing in the morning, then I know I'm probably going to be banging out doubles through the day. So it's a great way to start your day. I think it's perfect. Okay, so keep in mind, as OGers and stuff that are in the hangout here, I know you want me just to get onto crypto and Bitcoin and all that, but I gotta say that a big reason, a big sort of driver of these Broiler Chicken Show is to make darn sure that the level oneers, and they just went through the strategic planning module, that they don't have any lingering questions that maybe Grim couldn't totally speak to. So if I do spend a lot of the broadcast answering those questions, sorry, OGers. This day just that. I'll just quickly go and do a little corn summary here. I always like to sort of start off my day. Oh, there you go. So you already run out of time. Kevin's posted it. So no corn commentary today. Sorry. No, I couldn't do that to you good people. Okay, so I always like to start the day, just sort of get like an overview. I like to create this kind of matrix. It's going to take some playing with TradingView. You might need like advanced accounts, but in essence all I do is I just compare a whole bunch of symbols. And then I also overlay symbols, and then I put like I like to keep an eye on what the clowns over at the CME are doing, because frankly speaking, I think they're driving this bus, but other people in crypto don't like that kind of talk. Like to keep an eye on, where is Bitcoin on sort of a weekly basis, but also we follow a number of different sort of manufactured altcoin indexes, and then there's this one index that actually trades over on that FTX. So it'll give me an idea of just sort of what the trend of the altcoins are. I like to keep an eye on the three horsemen, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum, so you see who's sort of leading and who's lagging here of late. It's interesting. Litecoin has definitely underperformed relative to the other two. This screen right up top here, I like to watch, and this is probably the most pertinent conversation right now, is I like to watch the price of Tether relative to Bitcoin over there on Bitfinex. And when and people were talking about a whole bunch of Tether printing and this setting the stage for an altcoin rally and stuff. And we could probably talk a little bit about altcoins in a bit as well. But I just, as soon as the New York market closed there on Friday, things were relatively uppy, and it was like, okay, maybe we got something. And then I just didn't see any buyers show up at all. The whole damn market stopped, which really isn't a good sign for the bulls. I do understand that, and we can talk altcoins. I think that OMG was the catalyst that the market was moving into, but that's just my personal perspective. Also, too, I thought it was interesting. A lot of these sort of YouTube alternative plays were sort of moving up recently, and I think a popular person in the crypto community that does a lot of YouTube work had some of his videos banned and stuff. So I could see some jitteriness. In fact, even through the weekend, I went and just experimented with working with this library credits platform. It's a bit of a challenge. I don't think they're quite ready to compete with YouTube just yet. But nonetheless, it was an interesting experience. So I did see some names, and we could probably talk a few of the altcoin uppies in a bit, but I guess, this image really, I like looking at this kind of image because it's a great sentiment proxy, especially if all hell's breaking loose there in China and Hong Kong and all that kind of stuff. Is it, that huge Tether print? Was it just a whole bunch of people that in China that went and bought tethers to get the hell out of Chinese yuan? I'm not even quite sure how you would do that. But one thing I saw when I woke up this morning that I did not like was, you can see down, if we see W's in Tether, to me that says that they are, the demand for tethers to get out of what do they own, Bitcoins, is rising. So when I saw this morning, I was like, oh Jesus, that's not what the bulls want to see, right? And you can even see W's sort of within little M here, and I was thinking, okay, rock and roll, let's do this. And then we came up against these lows and then turned back up and then broke up through this high. So the point being that I'm seeing more WE action out of Tether, and that's not bullish for Bitcoin in my opinion. So that's not good. Then I like to watch the spreads. This is the casino. I don't really hear a lot of people talk about OKCoin anymore, which is kind of interesting. I mean, maybe it's more popular overseas, being North America here. I'm in Canada, so, obviously if you're in the States, you can't even look at these charts without sort of your local congressman raising their eyebrows. And frankly speaking, that's probably a really important note to you. In my humble opinion, don't mess with Big Brother. If you are, I'm not even going to make any direct references. You all know exactly what I'm talking about. If you live in jurisdictions where your government has said you are not allowed to do things, don't fuck with Big Brother. It's not worth your while. Find an alternative, but don't fuck with him because Big Brother always wins. Enough said. So I like to watch, these OKCoin spreads as a good sentiment indicator. And of course, if we see W's in this spread ratio, like we saw sort of the beginning of April there, that's a great sign. Love to see that. But if I start seeing M's, I do not like to see that. And then also too, what is the relationship between the forwards contracts and the current market? Is it trading at a premium or is it trading at a discount? That's this sort of contango backwardization conversation. So if I start seeing M's and I start seeing the price moving through the zero line, in essence going into backwardization, that's not a positive message. That it just isn't. And this is the worst part about sentiment indicators, is that in fact actually level ones, I had a conversation today. This might be a question on the list, so if it is, hopefully we can kill two birds with one stone right here. But the level oneers had a question today about breadth, because that's one of the concepts that they have to learn with strategic planning is to understand sentiment indicators. And here is basically the New York Stock Exchange number of stocks that are advancing versus the number of stocks that are declining. And I like to follow this ratio on a 13-period EMA. So that's what this gray, teal, green, whatever the hell color that is, line is. And the yellow line, of course, is the S&P 500. So you'll notice that this is a great contrarian indicator. So when it starts Wing out, making higher highs off of a low level, then, hey, that's a warning sign. Something's not right here. And actually, this is a fantastic little divergence right there. But nonetheless, moving higher highs and higher lows, that's a bad sign. But you notice, and that's sort of through here, lower highs and lower lows, especially this sort of signal. But you notice that as we got into this part of the dump, the advanced decline line is actually starting to turn back up, saying, hey, you know what, I'm not nearly as bearish, and up I go. And sure enough, the stock market gets dragged back up. But you notice of late, and this is what sort of leads me to believe, I put out comments about, I think Bitcoin's kind of topping out, stock market's starting to look heavy, we're coming into shorting levels, blah, blah, blah. Sell in May and walk away. Brian's crazy celestial events, beginning of July. Oh my goodness, it just, you can see it coming. But here's a really good example for the level oneers. I know there was a question specifically about the advanced decline line, but you can see how the advanced decline line, the number of stocks going up versus the number of stocks going down, is actually going down. So the broader market, the breadth, all the little stocks, they're not doing as well as this big index. And we've talked about this a lot recently on the site, and it's sort of common knowledge, but probably not so much with the public, that quite often at the end of bull markets, you actually get only about 3 or 4 stocks that are so big and they represent such a massive amount of the index moving up, while the rest of the market is actually moving down. And this is a bit of it's not real. To get a better idea of this advanced decline line, you should watch things like the Russell 2000, the Wilshire 5000. That's a really good index for the broader market. But there's a disconnect going on here. And all you level oneers, I would like for you to follow this. Now, there's a whole bunch of different breadth indicators that we gave you, but this is a really good example that there's something not right in the market here. The number of stocks making new highs is falling, right? And actually, in this case, number of stocks advancing, just going up. It's falling while the indexes are still rising. That's divergence. And it's a warning sign. Something's not right here. Kind of like here. Stock market's going to new highs. This number of stocks advancing is not going up. That's a warning. So, I wanted to talk about that. This is, again, the advanced decline line kind of thinking, sentiment thinking. This is just simply a relationship of what we call the term structure. And these are forwards contracts, OKCoin and Binance and all these crazy cryptocurrency exchanges. You're not futures contracts. I don't understand how the industry has been hoodwinked here, because a futures contract is exchange cleared, your price fills are guaranteed, and the exchange itself is not part of the transaction. I don't understand how the public is being basically lied to here by all these cryptocurrency exchanges, calling themselves futures contracts when they simply aren't futures contracts. But anyway, that's like Brian tilting at windmills, I suppose. But I suppose, if you ever have a questionable fill or lack of fill on those exchanges, you're going to find out exactly why they aren't futures contracts. Because OKCoin will just say, hey, you don't speak Chinese? Click. And that was the end of that conversation. Anyway, what letters of the alphabet do you see here, guys? I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. We're looking heavy. Something's not right here. And like I said, I really didn't like the idea that Tether perked up here. And, the tweet that I sort of put out here today, sort of looking at this image, is what's going on in the world? Is there any... actually, I haven't even looked at that YouTube page. Hey, there's 60 people over there. Hello, all you people. What do you guys say? Grim did a fantastic job, didn't he? Holy Anthony. God, that was an incredible job he did. Mr. Beamish in the corner. All right. I have no doubt, Brian, you are doing your work. All right, awesome. Good. Oh, I'm glad you guys feel it. LBC, I have so much trouble with that. Don't. Oh man, I'm not one to actually get like sort of upset. Somebody got me upset the other day for saying that freedom of speech wasn't important, and of course, me on YouTube and running the TRI and stuff like that. If anybody ever says freedom of speech isn't important, I get crazy, right? So, but I'll tell you. That library credit site trying to get that damn video up and running on a channel. Yeah, you ever seen that the funny meme from the internet where the guy's taking the computer and the keyboard and smashing the computer from back in the 80s? That's totally how I felt trying to use that platform. Oh god, that was a headache. Anyway, I tried, and I even put a tweet out. I said, yeah, I wanted to believe, but oh well. Okay, so back to our story here. This kind of image here, until I start seeing W's again in spreads, I gotta cool my jets. Maybe we can get this tether here, then puke out and start buying some Bitcoins with their tethers. But as it stands right now, didn't like that W at all. Ugh. And so I sort of go through my routine of sort of, okay, well, sentiment's down. We have the relationship of the corn, and the Ethereum and Litecoin. You can kind of see the ME type action here. Total market cap, really all of these divisions, they're all looking heavy here. So that's a little disappointing. It's really, I actually started the weekend off thinking that we were feeling quite uppy. And actually interesting, you can see some of the alt indexes that we follow on the site, and even the shit perp, there's still some strength in the market here. But it's not coming from the big boys right here just yet. So, that's sort of my overview. Let's see. This is what I usually talk to the public. We don't really need to look at that today. And let's see, what are the conversations? Level ones, and actually, no, let's finish off just the corn commentary with this image, and then we'll jump into those questions from the kids. The image here really hasn't changed a hell of a lot for a guy like me, and the irony of it all is that, Sunday at around this time, probably in about 3 or 4 hours, price is going to be very different from where we are right this moment. If somebody asked me, Brian, what do you think is going to happen? And remember, it's just opinion. Don't trade people's opinions. It's just their opinion. Trade your setups. If somebody was going to ask me what I thought was going to happen, I would have thought that we would have just worked our way right back up into this reload zone and settled down and then M'd out and then finished our move. It doesn't mean it has to happen that way. It's just this is the roadmap I've been using, and until we sort of break this model, that'll be my thinking. I was quite interested. We had talked about this last week, where the low that was put in there last on this dump, it was a funny low because that's a very powerful railroad tracks reversal there. So that was a pretty damn firm low. So it is interesting to see how MEX came down, slammed into that low, and then just sort of stopped. And my comment sort of on the site this morning was, let's just see whether the bulls actually defend this level. And you might even find there might be a nice little FU against this level, which actually creates the divergence that I was sort of missing from this low originally. That sort of led me to believe that I didn't really like this as a tradable low. We came into the weekend with the market pointing higher here. I think we were sort of like, this was like Friday with Colin. And to all intents and purposes, it looked like the market wanted to rally up to 50% rules, fill in notches on profiles, come back and revisit all of these lows. And, interestingly enough, this high right here, we actually just barely got into that low, right? So if somebody was looking at this chart and saying, okay, well, there's a key low, so that's a big M, and gee whiz, that's that same level there. So the market dumps, and then they look back and go, I can't sell here. Where was I supposed to sell? Oh, gee whiz, and look at this huge M up here. That's even a clothesline M level too. Oh boy, that's a big level. Look how that's created like this cluster. And actually, do we have any level 2ers in the call here today? I don't know whether you guys went over this with Kiran on Friday. Andrea, hi. Do you get the whole sort of horizontal support and resistance kind of conversation here? You see how that sort of ties into that concept? This level here clearly is pretty important to the market. So we rallied up into it. And, you know, it was so, and interesting too, if we just use this range, notice how that's the low of value. You'll be doing value and volume profile in a week or two. But it was just too stiff of resistance, right? And actually, ironically enough, this is probably a really, really good example of good old Ray Burchett. This guy I used to work with actually back in Top Step days. And he was a huge fan of 38.2 fib. I'd be curious to see whether Ray still comes on. Rocker, you might even want to consider that program. He calls it intuitive development for traders. You know, sort of. And ironically enough, he doesn't even look at any price charts or anything. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's everything about, are you actually setting yourself up so that, and actually we had a really cool conversation. I can't remember who it was with. I guess it was with the level 3ers, because the level 3ers, they're sort of in God mode now at TRI. So right out of the gate, first week of the course, it's like, okay, quit fucking around. Let's see what your trader workbench looks like. Let's see what your checklist looks like on your getting yourself set up. First thing Monday morning, do you go through a routine? Do you have all your software ready to go? Do you have all your levels identified? Do you have your setups clearly identified, right? Are you ready to rock this thing? And that's really sort of all about Ray's sort of program is intuitive development for traders. Ultimately, we have to get to the point where you're trading intuitively. So all the little stuff, like having a trading plan, knowing what the appropriate position size of the trade should be, knowing how to enter an order on your platform, all that kind of crap's taken care of. You're in the pit, you see the price hit, you see the guy over on the other side, him getting liquidated, and him freaking out, and there's nobody else coming in on the buy side. You could see his stop getting hit, and you just start fucking hitting the bid. That guy's trapped, he's in there, and let's drive him into the ground, right? That's intuitive trading. Where you're already in the swim, right? And it's really cool to see. I do see, crypto Twitter, some of the OGers. I've seen them, intuitively trading, like watching, we have one gentleman on the site, Ian Leprechavark is we affectionately call him on the site. And I think he's intuitively trading. He's gotten to that point. He watches order flow. He watches the what's that funny tool on they put that TLDR or something like that, the little puke out tool that they have on that site. What the hell's the name of that thing? It's just off the tip of my tongue. You know what I'm talking about? The any of you? Does anybody know what the fuck I'm talking about? Anyway, it's one of these crypto sites, and they have this, they count of pointers or counters or something like that. Tensor! There you go. Thank you, Kavarkinator. Kavarkinator, he's always saving my ass. Because if any of you watch the Monday to Friday shows, Kevin's he's picking all my stocks and fucking killing it on these stock picks. He was informing me in the middle of a show. Oh, by the way, one of our stocks popping, Brian. Yeah, you might want to pay attention. Is there nothing Kevin can't do? He's awesome. All right, back to our story. What were we saying? Oh yeah, good old Ray Burchett and IDT. And actually, you know what? I think. And actually, let's do a little poll of the. Hey, there's 80 people over there. Hello, 80 people. What are we supposed to call this crazy rant that Brian does on these weekends? There's one word, And one word only for this funny little sideshow of mine. What do we call it? Let's see if anybody's even listening on YouTube anymore. Oh, thank you, Khalid. You're awesome. Hello. No, I don't call it hello. I mean, you could if you want to. Just don't call me BitConnect for that. That would be awful. BCS. Hey, there you go. Brew. Hey, Brew. Was that you? Somebody, God, we were watching the U.S. Federal Reserve was testifying in front of U.S. Congress, and one of you guys, oh my God, he goes, right in the YouTube chat, he goes, at, the Rational Investor, so my name goes like into bold, and he goes, Civil War in capital letters. And I'm like, oh my God, what are you going to do? You're going to get the CIA after me. I don't know whether that was you, but I remember it was one of you guys that watched these free videos. Please don't do that. You're going to get me into trouble. Thank you very much. All right, so back to Mr. Burchett. Really good example, 38.2. This is why I like to call it the first stop target, and that's the name that I gave this, right? I like to think of this as a lot of dead cat bounces love to bounce right into 38.2. And then what you want to do is you really just want to watch how price behaves around this level. Because quite often, my little bearish bot setup, it says that the market has to bounce at least 33% and no more than 66. So quite often you'll get a bounce into 38.2, and you can see, look at this structure that's coming in here. So clearly, if you don't use this tool, not a bad idea. If you see a big move one way in price and you're kind of like, where's the market likely to bounce back to? Where's sort of a resistance level? And keep in mind, this is a Fibonacci ratio, and a lot of people in the public, they get this mixed up, and it's kind of one of these sort of old gnarly technician pet peeves. If we're actually talking 50%, it's a completely different concept. 50% is attributed to a gentleman by the name of W.D. Gann. And it's a very, very different way of looking at the market than the Fibonacci sequence. So, some people like to use 38.2. Some people like to use 50%. It's a tomato. There's no right or wrong way to trade. But if you can use these tools to help you understand sort of price action, I think that helps a lot. So if we just simply try and use this tool to understand price action, I love the idea of using the 38.2. It's all quiet there. Let's give it a different color. Let's go yellow. Hello, fellow. Come sit next to me, you fine fellow. All right, so we did our horizontal support and resistance, and the reason why I did it off of that level is because actually if we change this chart to a clothesline chart, you see that actually that's a pretty important pivot low there, right? So you could also do another one. That was off of a tail low, but you could also go off of that low right there. Oh, gee whiz, what a coincidence. Long and short of it here, you got 38.2. You've got all this, what we call horizontal support and resistance. I'll put it back to a candle chart. Here's another fantastic tool called the volume profile, which just simply tells you, what's the distribution of volume, how many people bought where given a different price. And interestingly enough, of course, we spent a lot of time up here, and, at TRI, man, we had a lot of people who were hunting shorts and that were short, and this was an extremely long, painful, arduous process just to be short and stay short and not have all the sort of crazy media talk and FOMO talk. Remember that big hedge fund manager? Is anybody calling up him and saying, hey, Mr. Hedge Fund Manager, why'd you tell me to go buy Bitcoin up top here? I mean, it's almost criminal, really. I like to keep the chart on my screen just to remind me how brutally blatant capitalism is. So Mr. Big Shot comes in and says, oh, rah, Bitcoin up here. and spends like the whole day Friday getting everybody long, and they still have not been released. Those poor people. So, and what's sad, right? This is typical trader world, is they brought the market right back into those levels. So any big shot that was like, you son of a bitch, why'd you get me in there? This was their opportunity to get out. And they basically got out at scratch. I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the world, but this is such a great analogy. If you hear Mr. Big Shot billionaire hedge fund managers touting the long side of something, just ask yourself, now, why would this guy be doing this? Maybe he's actually offloading. Because if you look at the chart, of course, the price had come up a long way. And interesting enough, he has such a big order that it probably took like a while for him to actually, it probably took that whole damn day for him to get filled on the sell side there. No, not that guy. In fact, actually, I saw a really cool picture I have in my folder of John McAfee. You know who I think of when I see John McAfee? I thought this was perfect. And the funny thing is probably this guy is more alive than John McAfee. I don't even know if he has a pulse or not. Where is he? It was such a funny picture. It was from years ago, though. It was so funny when you scroll through your old sort of screenshots and go, oh, yeah, I remember those jokes. Where are you, McAfee? Oh, damn, I can't find it. I hate when I can't find this stuff just off the tip of my fingers. All right, so I can't show it to you. Sorry, guys. Anyway, I was going to show you, there was a funny picture we did of McAfee and Beetlejuice. So here we are. Very interesting railroad track lows. I like railroad track lows because it just clearly shows, beep, market finished down there. They opened up the next bar, and if this was a bear, they had full permission to take it down. Sellers just didn't show up, and in essence, this is almost like a vacuum. Whoosh, up goes price, right back up. So this, if we looked at the profile on this probably would have been single ticks, that kind of stuff. So, had the natural 38.2 bounce, and that's pretty normal, dead cat bounce. What's interesting about this is on this sort of move up top, you can actually see that there were sort of messages from the market that, hey, I'm not that strong. I know you want me to be strong or you want me to be bullish, but I'm running out of oomph here. And the one thing that bothered me about this, and this sort of set the stage for sort of the Saturday trade, was the buyers just never showed up. Where the hell are the damn buyers? There's just nobody here. And, we did a show on Friday with Colin, and I even sort of the free follow-up daily brief recap, I was even like, yeah, we had a really upbeat. Things are looking pretty bullish. But, right across the board in crypto on Saturday, which was basically a follow-through day, I didn't see anything. These were a whole bunch of coins that were all sort of looking very uppy heading into the weekend. And you can see a lot of them. It's almost like the Viagra just wore off, eh? They just sort of like, what happened? This was the leaderboard. Now look at this guy. Ooh, ugly. And, like I had said earlier, what I think a big part of what was driving the little sort of mini crypto rally was this OMG story. And I got to give hats off to Julian. Right there yesterday, in the middle of the frivolity, Julian's coming into the site. I was sort of half... how does it go? 2 sheets to the wind. So I was certainly not in any position whatsoever to be doing any trading. But I saw him posting in the lounge, hey, can't we short that OMG on Binance? And isn't there supposed to be an airdrop? And then once that airdrop happens, isn't it's going to be like a vacuum on the other side of it? And I don't know whether the airdrop has actually happened or not, but that was an inside bar failure yesterday. Obviously wicks and tails like to be eaten. The setup here didn't really set very well up for me, and that to me means it was probably like a lower time frame setup. Oh, yeah. I mean, after a while, you look at this and you go, hashtag cliche. So, if I looked at this and then maybe threw on some indicators, do we have signs of divergence on any of these sort of moves up top? And then, of course, look at all these crazy M's, right? I mean, it kind of looks to me, just eyeballing this, it looks like there's an M within an M within an M. That was probably a pretty good level to get short off of right through there. Do you risk against this structure or this structure, or do you risk all the way up against this original top? But ideally, I always encourage people to consider things like, if you're going to risk your hard-earned money in the market, try to make sure to get paid. So, would a 2-to-1 on taking this short and just simply risking against this original top, would it make sense that you could actually squeeze out a nice win on that? 38.2s, Ray Burchett's, that's not quite good enough. And really, I don't really recommend using 38.2s as a profit objective. I like students to use 50% rule. I think that works pretty well. 1.77, yeah, it's a bit on the low side for risk, to be honest with you, for a guy like me. But nonetheless, I mean, maybe there's lower. Oh, actually, you know what? That actually, gee whiz, we can go all the way back to there, right? So maybe if you did take this kind of trade, maybe you got to be shooting for something like that. That actually is probably a bit more attractive. Then what I'd probably want to do is we have a nice little setup that I used to use when I was prop trading called the bot. It's got a bunch of rules built into it, and it trades more sort of trend continuation patterns. But, this is like 1 + 1 = 3 at TRI. Grim, working with the bot and being basically a professional trader and worried about risk. And, when you are a professional trader and you have money at risk, you kind of want to try and build into your plan ways to reduce anxiety. Because keep in mind, having money at risk, especially like day trading and stuff like that, very, very high anxiety life. So one of the things that Grim actually introduced into this sort of trading back to 50% rule kind of ideas was, what happens if we do things like use the bot trading rules on this 50% retracement. So i.e., if we hit 50% of the move your stop to scratch. And then that way we always say, we never really want to see a winning trade turn into a losing trade. That's mentally very taxing. So here's a great way where you can just simply say, all right, well, we had 50% of the move traded to. I'm just going to simply move my stop now and just get the hell out if it hops all the way back up here. But that gives you a hell of a lot of wiggle room right now. If we can trade down to this 147 and change, you can start trailing stops. And ultimately, if we hit this 128 level, you just want to ring the register. Nice 2.36 risk reward. And at this point, really, you shouldn't lose money on a trade like this. I mean, you might, have a shitty fill here on the exit. Maybe, commissions are going to make it a losing trade fractionally. But on balance, I really wouldn't like to see, had you taken this kind of M-top kind of thinking, I wouldn't want to hear that you actually lost money on a trade like this. So, like I said, Julian, I like how he, actually, honestly, I think Julian's actually starting to move into that intuitive trading mode. I'm starting to see it in him. So that's really great leaps forward by Julian, really have to say. So, I guess what I'm trying to say here with all of this was I was a little disappointed that we didn't really get a hell of a lot of follow-through on what appeared to look like a relatively half-decent stage. If the market wanted to rally, if the buyers did indeed come in and were buyers, and this was an enthusiastic, happy-go-lucky, say 2016, 2017 kind of crypto market, my hunch is these things would have all just, you can see the W's that were all in place. Everything was ready to go. One or two of them were able to push higher. So, and I think is this Theta token? Isn't this one of these video sharing kind of plays? I think it is, but I'm not positive. I know that, that library credits was catching a half-decent bid. That BTT, the bid 2, it was trying to move up. Nothing really substantial here. I mean, like I said, in years gone by, if we had just seen any kind of buyers actually step up to the plate here, these things would have taken off. But kind of like what I showed you with that Bitcoin chart, I mean, the buyers, they just didn't show up when they needed to. And that, in a way, it's an actually really good. This is a funny image. And actually, I love to do this, right? You know, if everybody learned, right? If you ever see the market smiling at you, you know what to be generally thinking. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen, but you really want to just sort of, you know, just, oh, what's that? Andrew Milligan says, yep, SATA is video buffering. Just having mainnet on 17th May. Oh boy, I have no idea what that means. But this has been an evolving story on the site. You know, if you ever see the market smiling at you, try and, you know, just think. You gotta be just a bit, you know, you just gotta cool down. Oh, is that what that reference is to, Andrew? Oh, thanks. Theta. Okay, yeah. So there you go. And you know, the irony of it all, I think I told you earlier, YouTube is, number one, is monopoly, right? Because I don't see any competition in the marketplace. Number two, they're really, you know, kind of messing with their customer base. And you can really see, I mean, gee whiz, it's gone so commercial. So I really don't like I hate to say it, and Stuart, you'll love this, man. YouTube is so American, isn't it? I mean, it just drips American. But anyway, so it doesn't surprise me that there's a lot of people trying to get away from YouTube now, and, you know, YouTube better be careful. They're going to alienate their customer base, and, you know, that's usually the sign of an end of a trend. But anyway. So, you know, this image on the screen, to me, this is really more just I would like to try and enjoy myself as a technician. Have fun with this, right? And I even posted, you know, if you don't laugh, you're going to cry. So you might as well laugh. We only have so much time on this planet. I mean, obviously acknowledge, you know, bad situations and, you know, sorrow and stuff like that. But if you are going to be spending your time, try and laugh. It just seems to make this a little bit easier to get through. So there's a funny little image for you. That's our Rasta BTC. And as I had sort of said earlier, actually what I expect is for the market just to slowly work its way back up into here and then out, and then we finally have our final second leg to that. But that's just Brian's opinion. I don't know there's no guarantees in any of this. I think I told you earlier that, you know, I love dollar cost averaging plans. And if, you know, TRI, we have a plan now in place to be buying for probably the next, 3 months. At our last team meeting, we approved the budget for the next 3 months' expenditures. So I love the idea of accumulating Bitcoin in here. You know, the cheaper the better. Dollar cost averaging, that kind of thing. If we get a dump down to 2,000-3,000, oh, I'd love that. Locally, a couple buddies of mine here were Canadian, so we're allowed to play on sites like Deribit. We have a little options account that we started up, and, you know, we did pretty well on that spring rally. It was kind of a fun little experiment for us to have a little local Vancouver club. And actually, we just went all into cash and just said, you know what? Why don't we just wait for the wrecked talk, wait for the whale alerts, massive liquidation, wait for the government's going to shit on the crypto market kind of talk again, and then we'll go back and buy some of this stuff back in. So that's generally my feeling here for the market. And, you know, unfortunately, you guys don't like that talk. I'm sorry. I don't really see any change here. I always say I was pretty impressed with the way Ethereum hung in here. I mean, Ethereum looks very, very dangerous. Litecoin really stuck in this downward channel. I don't really see any change. And, you know, interestingly enough, for these names, actually, you know, now is when we actually need to see the bull push. Now, I did hear some news about Ethereum. There was, and I don't know whether it was tied to that OMG pump, But there was some talk yesterday. I think that's why Ethereum caught a bit of a bid. So if Ethereum can consolidate and start breaking out through the top here, that'll be a good sign for the space. Because I could potentially, I mean, call me crazy, but I mean, I don't know whether you can see this or not. It's kind of hard to see. But if we can consolidate here and punch up through the top, this is actually a trading range. And it could project much higher prices. But the key here is we got to get those prices up through the top. So I'll just sort of freehand this. This should be fun. Kind of like left shoulder, right shoulder, head. Try that again. Right shoulder. Can you see the neckline forming there? So, I mean, you show me a nice close up in this area and, you know, nice candles painting higher highs. Yeah, I'll be turned bullish. Then I can start like hunting lower time frame setups and, you know, coming up with big upside projections. Yeah, so and people are saying, Colleen, you're turning in. You know, I love giving Colleen shout outs. And of course, everybody, your number one job here is to ring Colleen's bell, right? But fantastic student, went through the whole process. Saw her talking like an OG in the lounge with some of our other OGs this morning. I mean, it was just so solid. I mean, it's just perfect. I think I got it. I actually think you know, if we ever get through this COVID nonsense, I went and did a big tour of Europe and visited a whole bunch of our Europeans. I think I'd like to go down and visit a whole bunch of our Southern Americans down in the Southern U.S. and do interviews with you guys. And Colleen says here, you gave me a solid education. And that's absolutely the best thing you could possibly say, ma'am. So thank you. So, you know, and, you know, somebody even, I put out a tweet earlier in the weekend kind of saying, you know, if I'm a bull, I want to see, you know, people buying. I want to say, and they're like, oh, look at all this tether print. People are going to buy. There's going to be an altcoin rally. And I just simply said one thing. I'm from Missouri. Who can tell me what that term means? I'm from Missouri. Why would Brian say I'm from Missouri? Thank you, guys. Look at this. Colleen, you got a... Cheryl, are you aware that we have and I don't know whether it's sexist or not, but I do know that, you know, sometimes the boys can be a little gruff with their conversation. But we do have a ladies' lounge on the site, so I know some of our ladies from previous terms, they kind of like that. So I do see you just chimed in here. Yeah, look at that. You're like, really? Oh, I didn't know that. So there you go. If you PM me, I'll give you that that link. But yeah, okay, Colleen, I think you're the moderator in that group, are you? But if that helps you at all, Cheryl, of course, if we have any other females in the level 1 course, if that does help, it's there as a resource to help you. It's certainly not to segregate or anything like that, but I do understand that sometimes the boys can be a little bit silly. So that is there for you. So Cheryl, I just saw you post something that kind of caught my attention. Gee whiz, we got another lady on the site. Imagine that. Man, you ladies are you're gonna change, Brian, right? You know, for whatever it's worth. And the interesting thing with trading, and I hear this a lot from people, is that, and you know what, I'm wasting time. I've got about an hour here until Liam. So thank you, Disthentic, and I always mispronounce your name. You're actually from Missouri. Okay, cool. So the point here, when I say I'm from Missouri, I'll believe this is a bull if we can get back up here and start closing higher. Now, you know, things aren't looking terrible here. But like I said, I'm from Missouri. And then, like I said, with Litecoin, Litecoin looks very problematic here. How do I PM in the chat? Kevin or Sharktoshi, if you're around, can you maybe just exchange a PM with Cheryl? Because I think she's in the level 1 program. And maybe help her out. I don't know whether Cheryl, are you in the education program, or are you just here for kicks? Yes, level 1. Yeah. So maybe Sharktoshi or Kevin, if either of you could maybe. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Awesome. Oh, you guys are the best. Yeah. Okay. So what can I say about crypto? Do I have any rip-roaring buy signals? No. Do I think we are in sort of an area where if shorters wanted to take shorts, they would take shorts? Yes. Do I think that we have a lot of sort of uncertainty and sort of the cards for the risk asset deck are kind of stacked against us right now? Yes. Go slowly. Be very, very careful here, everyone. This is an extremely dangerous market. So on that note, hey, party. If anything, I'm kind of proud of myself, and maybe it's one of the reasons why the sites like YouTube and stuff sort of keep me around without banning myself and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, right? If I think this is a risky market, I'm just going to say this is an extremely risky market, and maybe it's in your best interest to cool your jets. I might be wrong. I'm just talking my opinion. Been at this game for 30 years. Edutainment, have fun. But at the same time, too, please, everybody remember what your absolute number one job. I've been at this for 30 years for one reason and one reason only, because I respect that what is your number one job as a trader. And I hope you do, too. If you don't know what the answer to that question is, maybe we should talk a little bit more. Okay, Kevin, I know we got lots and lots of strategic planning questions that really should get addressed here. So you put together a Google Doc there, right? So let's see what you got here. Let me talk a little bit about level 1 concepts here, people. I just want to really make sure that there aren't any sort of lingering questions from the program this morning. So first question, somebody says, does anyone follow Brian's tweet about the astrological cycle? When was the last time that happened, and what exactly happened? Dun, dun, dun. Sort of thinking along, and I've done a bunch of these. They're kind of fun to do. Thinking along, question is, where do I have them saved? Macro, maybe? Thinking along the lines of sort of long-term cycles. I actually, the more and more I sort of learn about this in my life, the more and more I see that planetary relationships seem to play a very significant role in our human existence. So here's an example of Saturn and Jupiter waxing and waning cycles basically every 20 years. And you can clearly see lines consolidation, growth, there's a mid-cycle, consolidation, growth, right? And then you have like mid-cycles, growth, mid-cycle, growth, mid-cycle. Then you sort of compare. This is in essence a monthly price chart. So 240 months is, what is that? 12 months, 20 years. Right, so that's the Jupiter-Saturn cross relationship. Me personally, I'm a big fan of thinking about this kind of influence on the human species and thinking about what's the typical generational cycle of a human being. And it turns out that is just about exactly it's somewhere between about 35 and 40 years. And interestingly enough, if you actually break sort of the earnings cycle of humans through their lives, we have sort of like the ramp up in our lives. Maybe that's sort of like, from like age 20 up to about age 50, 60. And then we have the ramp down from around age 50 on to 70, 80. And that's your whole life. Yeah, isn't that fun? When you're a kid, you don't really contribute that much to the economy. This probably isn't the best image to show you to demonstrate what I'm talking about right now. But it sort of puts into context this thinking. So, I don't really like to do this because there's a good chance I could just simply blow up my memory on my computer here. But let's give it a shot. What the hell, eh? We only live once. On the website, I actually have a web page on here that makes it really easy to see this. There's a number of different ways to look at these astrological relationships. And unfortunately, I'm like a user-friendly kind of guy. It's kind of like that library credits. That library credits is not very user-friendly. It's not very intuitive. It's not very... It's clunky. And so as a result, a guy like me, I get really frustrated really quickly. So, like most people, they get introduced to like astrological studies. They get introduced to sites like this. And you get this sort of image of all this hodgepodge on it. And again, it's not very user-friendly. It's not intuitive. I don't even really understand what it is I'm looking at here. I mean, of course, everybody is in the astrological. They're going, what are you talking about? This is so sorry. Okay, fine. If you've used this tool for like 5-10 years, of course, you understand exactly what it's saying to me. But I'm a visual sort of interactive kind of guy. And I think that this is one of the reasons, in my opinion, why this astrological notion and stuff sort of is kind of like it's on the fringe because, frankly, just Joe Sixpack looking at this, I don't understand what it is I'm looking at. So for a guy like me, I'm all about, like 1980s website. Keep it simple, stupid. I just want to see nice, simple, easy images to understand. And I love using a site like this because you can really dumb the message down. And trust me, I'm dumb. So, I mean, the dumber the better. So I want to just get rid of a lot of stuff here. I don't need to see the moons. Some people like to look at the moons. Don't need to see the stars. Don't need to see... constellations helps you understand the context, but we don't need to go into that today. Don't need to see the astro belt. Don't even really need to see a scale grid. Really, all I want to see is just what are the planets doing. And this is basically an image right now. And what should just simply jump out at you is, gee whiz, it sure looks to me like there's a lot of sort of, alignment going on here. And then, if we just simply zoom out, what you actually notice is that I showed you that chart earlier of the Jupiter-Saturn crosses. Usually there's, sort of right in this area. That's the big cross event. Sure hope my computer doesn't freeze up here. All right, you can see them crossing there. And the last time that it did it was 2000. I don't know. That sound like did anything sort of kind of significant happen around the year 2000? .com boom. Excuse me. Nortel Networks. Tech stocks, 35% of the entire Canadian equity market. Doesn't make any sense at all. What about the banks? What about the railroads? What about the factories? Nope, worthless. Let's just put everything into Nortel. It's the future. So, point here, obviously, there's some sort of historical reference. That was a key pivot. And what's really interesting about this, of course, is how were the humans acting at this point? Were people optimistic or were they pessimistic? Anyone? No one? It was a pretty good time to be alive, I'll tell you that much. I was there. In fact, my son was conceived that year. There are quite a few people conceived. In fact, I think they even call them the millennial generation right now. So it was a good time, What's really interesting is if we zoom back over time, right? We'll go back to when did the last time they cross, and boom, 1981. Now, was that a good time or a bad time? And you have to be sort of a student of market history and stuff like that. Turns out this was a bad time. Jimmy Carter was being embarrassed by the Iranians, the oil embargoes, the shocks. Americans were losing influence, blah, 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 blah. Joe Granville, we teach the level oneers about Joe Granville and his OBV study. He famously came out in 1980 and said, "Sell the stock market. It's all going to rat shit." How do you think that prediction worked? Not good. So, I'm just going to simply say that these, first and foremost, have any ever heard of a guy by the name of J.P. Morgan? J.P. Morgan? I don't know. Who asked this question? The person who asked this question, are you here now? Have you ever heard of a guy named J.P. Morgan? He had a famous quote about astrology. Does anybody know what his quote is? Anyone? How about you over there on YouTube? Bella says, message retracted. Oh man, Landon says, message is retracted. Is anybody even over there anymore? Whoa, look at the views falling off here. Choo, choo, choo. They're going up, they're going down. Hey, actually, look at that. I dare not say anything about that other thing, though. I'm gonna say if you like this big house, Mr. Big House, yeah. We're not getting much interaction here, so I must be doing something wrong. Sometimes these YouTube pages are just absolutely flying. But anyway, the famous quote by J.P. Morgan is, millionaires ignore astrology, billionaires don't. Yeah. The point that I would just simply make, just that demonstration right there, those 3 pivot points clearly should demonstrate that about once every 20 years, when these 2 planets cross, usually some pretty big pivots happen for our funny little species. And the key here that I think is actually the most important thing out of all of this, which I really hope you guys get, but I don't see many people get this. I hear people saying, now's the best time to invest in gold. Is it? Are you sure? Is this almost the same as 2017? Bitcoin's like 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, and somebody comes out and goes, this is the best time to get into Bitcoin and to invest in Bitcoin, when we knew at the time cost of production was only about $1,000, $2,000. 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. Now's the best time to invest in Bitcoin. You will never have another better opportunity. So that's what I'm hearing a lot about the fear assets and the classic assets like gold. I think, and frankly speaking, I still honestly believe Bitcoin's eaten gold's lunch and enjoyed the lunch very nicely. Thank you very much. Could we see more parabolic move on fear assets into this massive celestial event that's supposed to happen here in November? Sure. I mean, the reason why I make reference to there being 3 events here this year is it's kind of nasty, right? Because we go, let's see, go fast forward. There we go. This is, and what's worse, right? And we did lots of conversations with Shane. Shane loves this. But notice this little cheeky guy coming along here. He's supposed to be the destroyer. And notice, here we are 2012. Notice Saturn coming up. Hey, there's Mr. Pluto Destroyer. And here comes Jupiter real fast. And so hopefully after this talk about, wow, when these planets align, all hell breaks loose for us silly humans. Hopefully you can start to see, oh, Jesus, these planets are all starting to come together here. Right? And that's the problem here with 2020, right? Is we got this huge, damn computer, this huge event, right? And you can see them all going swish. My computer can't keep up. Damn it. Anyway, you get the idea. So, and there's like 3 of them, right? The first one came in April, right? And we saw that at the end of April. Where is that? 29. Come on. This and really, they had a better way to show this in the past, and it kind of bums me out they got rid of it. But oh well, it's the way it is. Right. So come on, you work, damn it, and then the whole thing will fucking freeze, and that'll be the end of that conversation for today. Yeah, it's too frustrating. Anyway. That's my conversation about celestial events. Your questions are all directly related to these 3 planets. And now, what's worse is that this Mars here is the planet of war. And look who's coming into the mix here. Here comes Mr. War. And what are the Americans and the Chinese doing? I mean, this is getting ridiculous. This could turn into a hot war very quickly, people. I sure hope it doesn't, but it could. So you can see this alignment, right? And here we are, May 28th, 2020. Can you understand why there's so much anxiety in the world right now? Right, so the next big event is actually July 1st, which is right there for me. And that is a perfect alignment of Earth, Jupiter, and Pluto. With Mars. I don't know whether Mars is conjunct. There might be a relationship here with Venus, Mars, and Earth here. But anyway. And then the big one, the one that I'm really worried about, is in November. Because in November, we come swinging around. And this is the end event. This is the climax to this whole bloody year. And then we can hopefully get on with our lives. But in November, we get one more swing by. And Mars is a right angle to Earth. And they, the astrologer people, they do not like that when these hard aspects come in like this. So I don't have the date exactly right. I think it's like early November, somewhere in here. So actually, I think it's like somewhere right in there. So that's what I'm worried about. So it's weird. It was like there's 3 of them. There's like one that came from this angle, then one that comes straight on, which we're doing right now, and then we have one in the fall. So that's why there's 3 events here. It's a mess. Ugh. Anyway, so there you go. There's your astrology 101 for today. Hope that helps answer the question. And keep in mind, I mean, I'm a student of the market. There's nobody that teaches any of this shit. This is just what I've learned and taught myself over the past years. And it's a lot of fun interacting with like the astrologer community because they actually see a lot of the same sort of words. And what's really interesting is Neptune here, actually on this April date for the astrologer type people, that Neptune in that perfect position where it was, that actually said that this whatever this event was going to be, it was going to be sickness related. There was some sort of square or something. I think it was Neptune, but I'm not positive. And like I said, these other ones, they've got Mars right in the crosshairs. And like I said, Mars is all about war. Wonderful. Okay, next question. Let's see what we got here. Brian, I love seeing all the talk about cycles, but I have a question. What if we're coming to an end of a larger cycle? Well, I'll tell you, there's some pretty damn big cycles that are changing here. So whoever asked this question, yes, you're absolutely right. We're coming into a, some even argue this could be like a new like 500-year cycle. The cycle of the rise and fall of empires. Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, is the person who asked this question, are you here? Anyway, bigger than generational time frames only thing is. Well, remember, just even in the course material, these are just these cycles that I keep an eye on this sort of day-to-day basis. But there is one cycle that I want you thinking about on the site that's even bigger than the generational cycle, right? And that's the interest rate cycle or the money cycles. So I do believe that the money cycle, right, and that's all about the Fed and the way that they hoodwink the entire sort of, it's really sad is the real sneakiness, the way these private central banks set themselves up there at the beginning of the 20th century. And I think one of their cycles is coming to an end. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're all going to hop on over to blockchain and all of our currencies are going to become digital because this cycle, they've milked the shit out of the system and you just can't get any more blood from this stone. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think there are some bigger cycles going on here. Bigger than generational. Yep. Well, like I said, we can think interest rate cycle, which is an even a bigger one. How can you show empirical data for something like that if the charts don't go back that far? It's a tough one. It was a challenge just to get the Dow chart going back to the 1915 print. We were pretty lucky just to get that. And that Dow gold ratio, I think that's a beautiful illustration of, basically desire for paper assets, i.e. greed, want to, buy your Lambos. And desire for hard assets, saving for retirement, don't trust the system, blah, 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 buy your gold and your commodities and your U.S. Treasury bonds. So, use the gold Dow ratio. It's an excellent one. Are there bigger, longer-term cycles studies that we can do? There is a gentleman called Kondriev. I don't know whether you've seen his work on the site. I have a bunch of his links in here. And this actually, I think, is a really good illustration of how we can actually look at these cycles going back like literally generations, centuries even. I mean, really, really long periods of time. And I think, yeah. So this one, just this study I grabbed off the net. I'm not quite sure exactly who produced it, but you can see this study goes back to basically the end of the 17th century. So that might help you see a little bit of the bigger picture. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We had one student on the site, great guy, Senne, from... Actually, I'm not even sure where the hell he lives in Netherlands. I can never remember the names of the cities. Yeah, the city I know, center of the universe, Breda. So we'll just say Senna's from Breda. And he's going to go, no, I'm not. Anyway. He actually went, when he was a student, he actually went and found a stock log from the Dutch stock market going back to like the 16th century, which was so cool. Is this information easy to find? No. Would the 1% like to give it out to the public? Probably not. But I would do some research into Kondriev. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Sorry if I am, sir. But this is, it turns out this pattern's actually very, very consistent over human history. So that might help you. Whoever is the person who asked that question here, hope you are. Anyway. When do you see the millennial demographic driving the greed cycle bus? Well, first we have to get through this recessionary period. In essence, that will be the reset. We always talk about hitting the reset button. In actual fact, I put out a study here recently. I think what has to happen here through 2020, 2021, is I actually think that we're going to do very similar price action to what the market did the last COVID or flu crisis. So I actually think that the next few years we're probably going to do something like this. So, and keep in mind, this is the peak from 1919 to the trough of 1921. What do we say the stock market usually loses? About what percentage? I even saw that it was talked about in the level 1 class today, so you should all know this. Yeah, rocker. Everybody get your rocker salute. We'll rock this thing. So, this is, and what's interesting is people go back and look at the stock market charts from like the 1920s, and all they can see is the huge bull market of the 1920s and then the crash of the 1930s, and they don't realize that, gee whiz, there's a nice 50% drop in equity assets. And people go, oh, no, well, that's a totally different world. And I would say no, because what this really is this is nothing more than a graphical illustration of human behavior. So, and human psychology. Oh my God, that guy's getting rich. I gotta buy. Oh, bid the price up. And then, oh my God, price is falling. I gotta get out. Ironically enough, it actually has very little to do with the actual underlying asset. So, I would not be surprised if our next year or two looks something very much along these lines. And really, that would be absolutely perfect for our crazy nutso pivot event that we look back in history and actually, yeah, that big Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto pivot event expressed in the price action looks something along these lines. Looks like a massive fractal. Oh my God, sky's falling. Oh, everything's all right. No, the sky is falling. No, okay, so, and then, okay, the crisis goes. We all sort of stop thinking emotionally. We let the economy take over again. Millennials come back online, heading into their earnings years. They start going and buying their BMWs, start doing their Coke, start wearing their Louis Vuitton, and the whole thing just, rinse and repeat. And away we go for the next 10, 15 years as they head on into their peak earnings years. So, that's sort of what I think happens here. And really what I need for all you level oneers, and people on YouTube understand this, think bigger picture. The whole purpose of these remember, this week is all about strategic planning. The purpose of these conversations is to try and see the forest through the trees. Most of the people, remember that first image that I showed you. I find it fascinating, and I do see it in the public. It's very natural that people are talking about, okay, what gold stock do I buy right now? But I think that's exactly like, okay, should I buy Bitcoin at $7,828? Well, now it's $11,325. Brian, you're a loser. You told me that this wasn't a good time to buy. Now it's $14,000. Now I could have doubled my money, you motherfucker. I'm going to sue you in court for misinformation. $17,000, you fucker. I'm going to kill you. You told me not to buy. And then, $2,000-$3,000 a year or two later. That's exactly what I see is going to happen in the gold market here. Did you like that? Somebody grab a sound bite of that. Because that's exactly what happened through that crypto run-up. And fuck, it was a pain in the ass to try and tell people, slow down. Put your money away. You're going to get hurt here. Yeah, but nobody listens. So anyway, what can you do? All right, where should we take this conversation next? What's the next question? What do you see is... Okay, so hopefully whoever asked that question, when do you see the millennial graphic driving the greed bus? And, I even posted out there, I think this is great. You can see the writing on the walls. The problem is nobody ever reads this shit. And if they read it, it goes in one ear, out the other. But the writing's on the walls. They're already talking about the transition happening. It is happening right in front of your face. It's just, it moves at a very slow snail's pace, and so we don't really pay that much attention to it. 5-10 years later, you look back and you go, son of a bitch, look at that. And what's really interesting, too, about this is I remember, I was alive. I was there. I remember back in 80, and I teach students about this. This guy, Joe Granville, he said, that's it for capitalism. It's over. Exactly the same conversation you're seeing here. Exactly the same thing. And it was unequivocally wrong. And unfortunately, I think they're falling into the same trap because they are getting sucked into thinking fear at the fear apex, which makes sense. That's naturally... We are most fearful at, what is it? What's there's nothing to fear but fear itself. We are most fearful when we're supposed to be most fearful. But to make money from investing, you can't think that way. You actually have to step into the breach, buy when others are selling. And then, of course, if gold does go parabolic here, have the balls to step in and let some go on those rallies. I don't know whether I'm really ready to step in front of the bus and actually think about shorting. But, look how long it took crude oil to break, right? It might take gold, the next 5-10 years to break and do what oil's doing now. And remember, I was a prop crude trader when crude was trading $100 a barrel. And it's kind of funny going over to TopStep and say, hey, John, when was the last time you saw minus $30 a barrel on crude oil? He's like, I've never seen that before. So, don't think that can't happen to gold. I mean, they can do anything in this world if they want to. Anyway, I'm not calling for gold market to crap out. All I'm just simply saying is try not to get sucked into the vortex. Keep a sort of unbiased opinion of assets. And of course, as always, especially if you're going to be a rational investor, try and figure out what the value of one of these things is that you're buying. And, once you sort of figure out, Bitcoin cost of production, once you figure out what like value is, then you want to look for your W's and your divergences and your 50% retracements. And I tell you, if you can approach the market from that perspective, man, this game's actually pretty easy. It's just it's so easy to say, and absolutely impossible to do. Well, Andrew says, should he sell his Franco Nevada? I mean, if the price does what, you're going to do what, Andrew? I mean, I think you know the answer to this. I think you're just fucking with me. And actually, I had a little gold stock I picked up at like 60, 70 cents, and I was just like, I just want to have some on the books. And the goddamn thing's like getting close to double on me. And I'm kind of like, well, what would be the prudent thing to do as an investor? I mean, if I can get myself into a risk-free position where I have no risk on the trade, that's not such a bad place to be. So, obviously, Andrew, what's your cost basis? What's the price relative to your cost basis? What kind of dividends are you collecting? Have you collected enough dividends to actually pay you back that actual original cost? I mean, there's a ton of questions involved in there, Andrew. You know that. Anyway, and I thought this is a great. You know what, Andrew? You know where this comes down to? And I love this. This is more of this kind of talk that this site has now gotten to the point. This gentleman here, I won't mention his name, but super duper testament to everything I wanted to do at TRI, and I just love him for it. He bought the Kool-Aid. He's making money from trading. He's a beautiful human being unto himself, and he deserves all the success in the world. Just don't let it go to your head. You know who. But the point here, I thought this was adorable. And so, Andrew, you know where this comes into right here for you? I saw this, and I was just like, yep, absolutely perfect, right? Where is it? You're on here somewhere. There it is. Play from a position of strength. So, if I can get myself into a position where I sell a whack of stock and I got all my original capital back, what's my risk on the rest of the investment? 0. I mean, you can't have any stronger position than that. You just can't. And remember your number one job, rocker. So I love this kind of stuff, right? It's reverberating. These are all good axioms that you might as well just simply print that off and put it in your journal. They're truisms of the market. And I love that about this site, is that the message is getting through. So, okay, let's move on. So I got about 45 minutes here until Liam. So let's who's next? So you say what's this? So say you have a time horizon for BTC of 10 plus years. Am I right? Since we know S2F, what the hell is that? S2F will increase every 4 years. I guess that's the happening. 4 years, doesn't just holding make more sense? Even if BTC crashes 80% from cycle top, is cashing out to inflated USD really a wise move, knowing BTC will be more scarce every 4 years? Well, I've often made the argument, whoever posted this, that I believe that the built-in inflation in the price of Bitcoin really kind of makes Bitcoin a no-brainer buy. It's, in my opinion, it's a rise-only market. The question ultimately here is, do you get sucked into the stupidity? So the last cycle, of course, we talked at length. I remember passing around this when the John McAfee pictures. In fact, I bet you, I know I have it around here somewhere. The only problem is, where the hell do I God, I hate using these damn platforms. I never figure out how to use this. You just click on stuff randomly. It would be nice if there was like your photos link, but I don't see that. Do you? Media, maybe over here. And oh God, I hate trying to search this crap. Let's see if we can get something. I know I did it. It was so funny. I was trying to show you guys earlier. I don't know if that's how you spell his name or not. Hey, there he is! Look at that! First hit. That to me, that's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So there's John McAfee. But anyway, a few years ago, he came out publicly and he says, "Hey, I'm mining Bitcoin at $1,000 a coin." All right, so he sort of set the base. That was back sort of 2015, 2016 when we sort of figured cost of production. And you could have bought all the goddamn Bitcoins you wanted at 1,000. And then the price went zipping up to 20 G's. Now, who on earth is buying at 20 G's? Certainly not the people hunting value. And that's the trap that you have to avoid here. So I don't know who asked this question. The person who asked this question, are you here? You know, I totally agree with you. And actually, I believe that Bitcoin has a great sort of... you know, there are a lot of kids that were putting out the flow to stock ratios. And remember there was that gentleman, what was his name again? Cute little scientist, math guy. It was fun listening to him talk on YouTube. Benjamin, I think his name was. Something like that. Anyway, he had some cool sort of logarithmic growth curves of Bitcoin. And I think his attitude was maybe we're on a 5-year cycle. But, you know, on balance, I do like that idea. Whoever's asking this question, that, yeah, it'll go through its very natural ebb and flow. The key here, I mean, if you believe in the Bitcoin story, and let's see if we can just give you a bigger chart to look at. I think I have something over here, didn't I? Oh, I don't know what I do with it. Rastaman, what are you doing to me? Well, here's a monthly chart. So, and is the person who asked this question, because I like to talk directly to Benjamin Cohen. Thank you, Min Doc Vu. Is the person who asked this question here? Excuse me. In fact, actually, you know what? I gotta fill up my beverage. I'll be right back. Just water. Boo. It's just boo. I'm all out of coffee. If whatever, you know, you people on YouTube are like, this guy just gets up and walks away from his show right in the middle of the show. You can tell we don't have any sponsors. This is just Brian just talking, enjoying himself, having a fun time. Anyway, I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, one of my students reminded me back years ago. Right in the middle of class, I would get up, and if I had to go to the bathroom, I'd just go take a piss in the bathroom right in the middle of class. They were like, I can't believe he's doing this. Anyway, I'm a weirdo, no doubt about it. We've got 40 minutes till Liam, so as long as we can get these questions answered in the next 40 minutes, then it's a win. So, point of the matter here is that was when we were having $1,000 McAfee Bitcoin cost of production conversations, and you can see the cost of Bitcoin was around 1,000. Your job as an investor is don't get sucked into this bullshit. Right? And don't get sucked into this bullshit. You want to just force yourself that when we get near those cost of productions, we had this conversation about a year and a half ago now. Jeez, I can't believe it's that long ago. Where we were starting to get down, 4 years later, starting to get down into areas where we could be at cost of production. Great. You know, go load up. Don't get sucked into this bullshit. And now technically, cost of the production's now somewhere around, I think it's like 4 or 5,000, somewhere in this area. Okay, but don't get caught up in this bullshit. So that's the way I would answer your question. All right, try and figure out what the cost of production is for Bitcoin, and just simply wait. Especially with Bitcoin, it's so easy. I mean, I remember, Julian and I started a business here. You couldn't give away Bitcoin here. Same thing here. Couldn't give away Bitcoin here. In fact, I remember through this, everybody on crypto Twitter was short, right? Everybody, and then they all got fucking wrecked when they got stopped out. So try and figure out what cost of production is. We have a rising scale here. What's interesting is it seems to stay relatively stable with the depreciating cost of technology advancement plus the dilution of the U.S. dollar. And I think, Satoshi and AKA CIA, AKA Charlie Lee, I think they understood this when they built this thing. Whoa, there's a bombshell. Okay, hopefully that helps. Where or how can we calculate BTC cost of production? If the cost of mining Bitcoin electricity costs the cost of buying Bitcoin at spot, what is the result? If cost of buying Bitcoin electricity cost is greater than cost of buying Bitcoin at spot, what is the result? Okay, so, ultimately this is where I think Bitcoin's uncle point is. So, first and foremost, can we, at any one given point in time, say, absolutely, this is the cost of mine Bitcoin today, right now? Not really. There's a lot of moving parts. Of course, you have things like difficulty, which adjusts. But also, too, electricity costs can vary depending on if you can buy bulk electricity from a big utility concern, or whether... hell, I remember there was talk of at the end of, I guess it wasn't at the end of the Cold War, the USSR had a whole bunch of nuclear-powered submarines sitting there just doing nothing. And I remember, 5-6 years ago, there was a lot of talk about, hey, why don't we fire up one of these nuclear submarines, set it adrift out into the ocean, and let it just mine Bitcoins? Well, what's technically the cost of production there? So... that is an ongoing debate. And then also, too, obviously equipment changes its, efficiency over time. It gets better and better and better. So there's a lot of moving parts here to actually say, what is the cost to mine one Bitcoin? That's not exactly an easy answer to solve. We did share, of course, in the level 1 class, Shane's awesome study. And Shane's, of course, where the hell is it? Can anybody help me here with a quick link? I can't remember. It's in here somewhere. I can't remember where I put it, but one of our site members created a script on TradingView. It might be in the TradingView scripts here. Oh, that's Thinkorswim. Created a script, here it is, based on some basic inputs and the various different mining equipment and what their costs. And actually, I think now there's even an S19. So there's even a more efficient Bitcoin miner out there right now. So can you determine exactly the cost of production to mine one Bitcoin is this? Well, it depends on how much you pay for electricity, depends on what equipment you're running, depends on, do you have any infrastructure costs? Do you have to buy the equipment, the miners, and are you financing them? So there's a lot of moving parts. And actually, quite often what we like to do is just look at the public mining companies, look at their quarterly reports, and they often disseminate what their cost to produce crypto is. And I remember there was one company that was mining Litecoin at $100 a coin. They mentioned that in their quarterly filings. And I was just like, for God's sakes, turn the machines off. You're losing money. I think they got the message. So the key here with Bitcoin, if I understand it correctly, decentralized, permissionless, validated blockchain of confirmed transactions. The critical component here is this thing called mining. It has to happen to validate the network. And unfortunately, if you control mining interest within a cryptocurrency and you can actually get the market share of that mining, the validation, up to a certain level, i.e., 51% attack, you can quite literally take over the network and rewrite it. And of course, something like Bitcoin, that might mean basically changing billions of dollars worth of transactions at your leisure. So that's Bitcoin's uncle point, is this idea of the 51% attack. And every time I've seen where the cost of Bitcoin keeps falling, and the miners, the marginal miners that have these higher costs of production, they get squeezed out, and the market share starts to compress amongst the big mining pools and the people that are operating this kind of equipment. Every time we get to the point where there's so few players that the fear of somebody having the ability to do a 51% attack, mysteriously a bottom comes into the Bitcoin price. So that's my sort of answer to that question. It's a big question, but hopefully that helps you understand my thinking with regard to how the market actually deals with the cost of production and the price of Bitcoin in the spot market. And this whole idea that, if Bitcoin can actually get to the point where it is 51% attacked, then the whole Bitcoin story is meaningless. The whole network is worthless. And there's enough people in this industry, there's enough people in this business, there's enough capital invested in this business that I don't think that the people who have that capital invested really want to see Bitcoin collapse. And ironically enough, they may just back off when we get to that sort of magic level. So I'd just watch for 51% attack talk. All right, next question. Can crypto exchanges be closed by the governments? I suppose it all depends on where the crypto exchange is located. And the United States of America in the latter part of the 20th century really started to take on this sort of global policeman role. And what they say now, like to someone like Arthur Hayes, is that we're going to try as hard as we can. Same thing with sort of like Iran and North Korea, is we're going to make it in everybody else's best interest not to interact with you. I.e., we're not going to try and come after you, but anybody else who even acknowledges that you're alive, we're going to make their life really shitty. And that's my sort of hunch, the way these U.S. regulators are going to play this. And I had sort of said earlier, everybody be cognizant, be careful, understand fully, Big Brother always wins. So if that means you want to just take your Bitcoins completely off these exchanges and just put them on a nice cold storage wallet, take your, completely disconnect from the network, there's nothing wrong with that. And, put it on like a little USB device, completely separate from your computer, bury it in your backyard, and those Bitcoins will just sit there indefinitely. But do understand that, it may be something like little bald men that control the U.S. House Means and Ways Committee. I mean, you see that guy. He tried to take a run at crypto a while ago, but he might say something along the lines that we can't come after you, Mr. Arthur Hayes, but anybody who talks to you, looks at you, interacts with you, we are going to make their life really difficult. So that's probably and of course, if you are within the jurisdiction of the U.S. government, they can do any old damn thing they want. They want to put you out of business, bang, you're gone, right? And the U.S. still has the biggest, strongest military in the world. So as long as that's the case, they're carrying the biggest stick. People seem to be still buying their paper. I don't know why, but they are. I wouldn't fuck around with the U.S. government right now. It's just not worth the headache. How high is the possibility? Well, if it's an exchange within the United States, I could say it's extremely high. But rather than close the exchange, they may close it outright. They might just, come and put a cease and desist order. I don't think so, though. I think most of the U.S. players have kowtowed to regulators and are doing what they are asking of them. And actually, the way I look at it is I think there is a massive growth boom, think roaring 20s, coming ahead of us in the next sort of 10, 15 years. And I believe that a site like Trex is actually putting itself into a position where it's going to be probably one of the biggest beneficiaries of the altcoin surge that's coming in the next 5 years. And they're trying to be very quiet. I get the impression, sites like MEX, the lawsuits are going to start flying. I don't know whether Mr. Hayes even gives a shit about American lawsuits. But it may mean that Mr. Hayes can never visit the United States ever again in his life. And if he does, he might get arrested on the spot. Kind of like Snowden kind of talk. Does Mr. Hayes want to live the life of Snowden? You know what Snowden's life's like. And then, of course, guys like Binance and all those kind of crazy guys, do they give a shit what the Americans are thinking? The only problem with that is if you start, burning bridges, let's say you burnt the bridges with the West because you were thinking China has got your back. Oh, my goodness, that would be a dangerous assumption. And then all of a sudden, China one day screws you over. What do? Right? You've burnt all your other bridges. So, impossible to say how that's all going to go. So, anyway, hopefully that helps you a little bit in that regard. For whatever it's worth, right now for my registered account, I'm buying the Bitcoin fund out on the Toronto Stock Exchange. I don't have any exposure to Bitcoin itself other than through TRI. And Liam owns some Bitcoin, which is kind of amusing. But I don't have any Bitcoin because all of my anything I've done in crypto I've done under the banner of TRI. So, but just an FYI, I'm buying Bitcoin for my retirement fund in the Toronto stock market. Imagine that, eh? And then the last question on this sheet here: can crypto morph into a growth asset? Is crypto becoming an asset class of its own? And then this was a really cool conversation that we had in the Level 1 program here today. I like the idea that these cryptocurrencies, if they are used for something, they will have value based on the amount of usage of whatever it is that they're doing. So IBM wants to use stellar lumens as sort of the Internet of Things. Does an asset like that, is it just purely a raw commodity? The unit itself is actually meaningless, but the actual amount of use of the unit is the critical thing. And does that drive the price of those things? Ironically enough, in that kind of model, and that's sort of the same thing that Vitalik ran into with Ethereum last cycle, was that if the prices of these things get too expensive, the things don't really make sense to be used. So in a weird sort of way, I don't think it's actually in Stellar Lumen's best interest to have the price too high, because then the cost to actually use the thing just doesn't make it competitive. So I don't know. From that perspective, it's still a commodity. I would also say, too, that this asset class is very susceptible to the fear-greed mentality of the human species. So kind of like what we were talking about with, yeah, Bitcoin's a rise only market, but don't buy when everybody else is freaking out to the upside. And then, of course, don't, get suckered into FOMO panicking dump on the downside. Try and figure out what the value of one of these things is, and then, of course, apply all the silly technical analysis stuff off of things like higher time frame weekly charts and stuff. It's not a bad, if you can figure out what the general cost of production is for your cryptocurrency, and then start hunting technical setups at or around those levels. That's a great way to make money. But not only crypto, same thing with the stock market. Figure out what sort of value is on your stocks, where the insider's long, all that kind of talk. And then hunt your technical setups off of those levels. It's a great, great way to make a living. The only problem there is, kind of like 2017, you might have to sit there and say, you know what, there is no value here, so I just have to sit and do nothing. And I don't know whether I don't know whether a lot of people in the public have that kind of discipline. It's not easy. Anyway, I definitely think that the crypto story is unfinished. No doubt about that. It is evolving as we speak. You might argue that crypto is one of the elements of the internet's build out. And I remember back when we were first starting with things like email, and people would say, this is just the first inning of the internet. And then obviously Bitcoin being the money sort of protocol. Well, this is just yet another inning in that building out of the internet. And I think you could make sort of like a baseball analogy of crypto building itself out. And to me, it feels like maybe crypto's in like maybe the third or fourth inning. Where, we've had a few cycles now. I don't think the story's over. And, sadly, and it's really cool to hear students say this, like students that have been on the site years ago. I said at the very beginning of this entire episode, back in like 2014, actually 2013, when I wrote that funny letter to my cousin, that I believed that at the end of this story, every single human being on this planet will be on the blockchain. You will have an immutable record of your entire life. And you better not pull that puppy's tail in grade 3, or you're going to be paying for that when you're 20, 30 years old trying to get a car loan. I'm telling you. It's exactly the same story I said 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't see any reason whatsoever to change that thinking at all. And that probably happens, 2050, 2060, 2070. So, like, what does this Ethereum, is it 3.0 now? 2.0? Something like that. I don't know which Ethereum version they're working on now. What does that look like, right? Ethereum wanted to be the world's largest computer. The great part about a lot of these cryptocurrencies, and, what I'm seeing a lot of right now is... who can tell me over there on YouTube? Let's see if any of you even remember. And site veterans, you're not allowed to answer this question. What cryptocurrency did Brian squawk about being all proud of buying at 2 sats? And how many sats did that silly cryptocurrency top out at? Thank you, Jeff. I'm asking the YouTube audience. Let's see if anybody on YouTube even knows this. I mean, it wasn't even that long ago. This is just a few years ago. But I used to squawk about this all the time. Hey, there you go, random. Very good. Oh, good. Excellent. Good. So some of you guys remember. So I bought that Verge at 2 sats. 2 sats. And it just went to ridiculous levels. So I'm seeing a lot of exactly the same thing here. If I just pull up a chart, let's just do one here. To me right now, the cryptocurrency space looks exactly like... I need a really long dated one. I don't need that on there. And Yeah. So I had a lot of fun doing this demonstration, and that's the cool thing about the site is I didn't really have any sort of monetary goals when I did this whole crypto thing. I mean, if any of you know my story, guided by the other side, the light shine the way, all that stuff, right? Um, but this is a perfect example, and I see a lot of this in crypto right now. So just try and remember this, okay? Um, Whenever you get a market that just basically parks itself in a trading range, I mean, look how long this thing parked itself. And I do this in the free videos right now. Like, I believe that remember we talked about that 70-year interest rate cycle. I think it's changing right now, and actually what you see in the marketplace is the absolute perfect scenario for that change to happen. So just out of curiosity, what do we call this kind of price action? Anybody's been following my tweets and my public broadcast, blah, 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 you should know what we call this. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller, we've got 18 minutes. 18 minutes, and then Liam's got me. Accumulation. All right, that's not bad. Actually, I have a 4-letter acronym that I always post on a chart that looks like this. Always, always, always. 4-letter acronym, and actually I'll show you what it looks like in the bond market right now. So let's see. Does anybody know what we call... where the hell is it? If I can find the bond market. So many charts. Actually, I think it's the one that I show the public here. It's around here somewhere. But I think it might actually be over here. Is the trouble of having too powerful of a computer is you just get way too many charts. I'm so spoiled. So, what does NSCH stand for? Anyone? Long sideways action. That's pretty close, Felipe. Not bad. Narrow sideways channel. Way to go, Jack. You got it. Nanny Nibble. No, not Nanny Nibble. Nanny is sidelined with Chilean hot sauce. Okay, well, that sort of works. Anyway, we call this a narrow sideways channel. So, looking at that fun little cryptocurrency, it's the same sort of thinking, eh? Now what the hell do I do with the damn chart? Over here? Maybe it's over here. So, when you see price action like this, the old actual the adage is the longer the channel, the bigger the run. And what do you think? Were they right there? Nice long narrow sideways channel, and woohoo! So I bought my, and we'll take this out of percentage and we'll just show you. I bought this damn thing at 2 sats, right down in here. And I mean, look at this. I mean, 240 sats. Well, that's not bad. It's 120x, right? But I think it even went higher, didn't it? Yeah, look at that. Boom! What's that? 1,900 sats to almost 2,000 sats. So, I mean, that's the lunacy of venture capital. The point here is that I'm seeing a lot of this. Oh, gee whiz, look at what we're doing again here. Can you see this? I mean, I don't know if this is the bottom. I mean, I think it's probably worth more than 2 sats these days. But gee whiz, this is kind of looking familiar. Hopefully, and I'm not touting this name. I don't know it from Adam. But here we are, 44 sats. And this is the insanity of blow-off top markets. So, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of names. And like you probably see on my sort of like daily videos and stuff that I do with people. I have like these, right? And if you look at almost all of these, they all look like this if we zoom out. I mean, you take any one of them. I really like this Syscoin. I think they're great guys, and I think they'll do well. But you just look at this chart. I mean, can you see that Verge coin kind of thinking here? So the writing's on the walls. I mean, this is the kind of same thing as those tweets that I put out, talking about the generational shifts. I mean, the irony of it all is the market's actually telling us, there's lots and lots of little anecdotal pieces in our society saying, yep, the shift is on. Where the hell did that damn news thing go? I thought I had it around here somewhere. Yeah, here it is here. There's lots of stuff like this out there. It's just a question of, are you going to pay attention to it? Nobody's talking about that sis right now. Nobody's talking about, all these altcoins just bumping along the bottom end of their ranges, not doing anything. But, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago from now, you're going to hear guys talking about getting rich off this shit. And you'll know that they were accumulating now. So, okay. Hopefully that helps answer that question. Looks like I got through the questions that Kevin posted on the Hangout here. So, we are approaching 1:45. Really wanted to make sure that I just wanted to clean up any loose ends from that class this morning. I hope you people over on YouTube got some good value out of this. Watch me on 3 times speed. I think you can get through it that quickly and still understand what I'm saying. I can't speak highly enough about the TRI community. The staff, very pleased to see that the student body is very enthusiastic and super PMA. I'm seeing lots of students trying to reach out and help out other students. Love that. I think our level 2 instructor Kiran is off and running, having a lot of fun with that group. I'm having a lot of fun with the new level 3ers, and really trying to get them to think that they're no longer in a school with me, but they're actually peers of mine. And I want to be talking to them eye to eye, face to face, not on some sort of podium barking down at them, thou shalt do this, thou shalt do that kind of thing. So in a weird sort of way, it's actually a little bit of a culture shock for the level 3ers. But great interaction group. I really like the direction TRI's headed. Big hats off to, big shout out to David Eisner. I don't know whether I'm supposed to say your last name or not, sorry. But David and Julian, of course, TRI principal, sort of our point man on marketing and stuff like that. I think they did a fantastic job. Really represented TRI really well. So, and I think a lot of people felt like they got a lot of good value out of that promotion. So, way to go, guys. Gotta tell you, the future's so bright here at TRI. Gotta wear shades. Super enthusiastic. If anything, the only thing Brian's got to do is just make sure he doesn't screw anything up here. We got a really great thing going here. Knock on wood. That was my skull. I don't know whether you heard that or not. But thank you so much to the entire team. Thank you to the community. Thank you, YouTubers. For your belief. Hopefully you're getting to know the type of person that I am, and understanding that really, on all honesty, I don't have any great agenda here. There's only really one thing I want. That's to try and make a positive difference in this world, guys. It's genuine. It's the truth. And it's what keeps me coming back every single day, day in, day out. Let's just keep doing it. So, thanks again. Have yourselves an awesome week. Level allers. You got your work to do. Get to work. Make Brian proud. The only left for the old man to say at this point is a big hearty bye for now.